This podcast is a challenging art piece, not escapist.
Exactly, it's deep.
That's
Okay.
right. Then I guess you're a wanker.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 509. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tance, Baines, and Pitface.
Hi.
Hello. When are they going to take the salt out of salt water?
It's impossible.
Stick it in me. The Saltcast. That's what this is going to be. I can feel it already. It's going to be the Saltcast.
The Saltcast, I love it.
Salt or salt?
Yeah. So, in this QUACKCAST, we are talking about the idea of escapist fiction versus anti-escapist fiction, basically. Stuff that's more gritty and realistic or, has a good point to it versus stuff that is more escapist. But escapist stuff can have a good point to it as well. But yeah, like the idea that escapism is necessarily bad and defending it. Or maybe this QUACKCAST is really about how escapism is bad and we shouldn't do it. Ooh. I like that.
It definitely has to be one of those very black and white stances. It can't be anything else.
Yeah. Middle ground is for weaklings, for weak people, as Tance says.
Weak people.
You must have, we must all have the wisdom and the courage to go either all the way to one side or all the way to the other side. Otherwise,
exactly. Extremist point of views are where it's at. For goodness, if you haven't got an extreme point of view, then what are you doing in this world of 2020, almost 21, 2021 almost? This is a world where...
Take yourself off of your mom's tit and go read some philosophy and some Eli Weiss and Weiss. I can never. Anyway.
Pick the most extreme one. Eli Weiss. Read it. God's sake. Imbibe that. Live it. Suck it in through the pores of your skin and absorb it. Become it.
Yeah, and then trim it with a little bit of Nietzsche.
Yeah. Drink it down with your piss, and only then will you be able to properly understand.
People with this intro are like, "What the fuck is going on? What are they talking about?"
Whoever didn't just click away from this, hello. Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay, either escapism is the best thing ever, or escapism is for idiots. There's no middle ground. We're gonna argue this out. Okay, but before we get into that, I gotta bring up the featured comic. Featured comic this week was the very escapist Spazient. Or Sparsiant, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Spazient.
So, Spazient. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Spazient. Lord Zyot is about to have a very bad day. Actually, an extremely bad day. He's come down to Earth looking for a very powerful helmet that increases the wearer's intelligence and abilities, as well as allowing them control over all sorts of alien high-tech stuff. But before he can get his big, fat alien hands on it, a naughty little Tasmanian tiger rushes in and gets there before him. Then things go from bad to worse. But not for the plucky little Tassie tiger. This is a fast-paced action-adventure sci-fi comedy featuring great chase sequences, space warships battling it out, fighting robots, and plenty of laughs from the helmeted Tassie tiger and the enraged Lord Zyot. This is pure black and white comic with great consistent, stylized artwork. It's quite fast-paced. You'll find yourself being able to read through it in one sitting, just in an hour or so. Even though there's I think over 80 pages, it's still a very, very quick read because it's so engaging and it's so fast-paced. It's such a compressed story. There's lots sort of happening in it. Especially with the big chase sequence and the fight between Lord Ziyot and the little girl Tassie Tiger, which is quite funny, and many robots and all sorts of things happening. Lots and lots of action. So I hope you enjoy it. This is a comic by Cope, and it's rated E for everyone. And that was the featured comic, which is Spezient. Okay, so next up we have the featured music. Gumwallis has given us a theme to a comic called Whispers of the Past. A beautiful, quiet, contemplative, noodling, evocative of days gone by, sepia tones, golden afternoon sunshine and remembrance. It reminds me of something from the late 1960s folk rock groups. So take it away, Gumwallis, with Whispers of the Past. And that was Gumwallis' theme for Whispers of the Past, which is a nice little webcomic about Baines doing ASMR. So I recommend it. If you want to feel your skin crawling.
I was wondering if anyone would try to do parts with them or something. If we waited long enough. Snake language. So.
Snake language. So we're talking about escapist and anti-escapist trends, and basically taking extreme points of view. Say why escapism is actually for weak people, and why
You're the weak.
And
I'm the tyranny of art films.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Why the realistic stuff is for us superior thinking people, and the escapist stuff is the opiate of the masses. Yeah, that's basic. That, like Simon Pegg says, Baines supports this idea because Baines is with us. This escapism, it's like a McDonald's in your head. You're stuffing a Big Mac directly into your brain and becoming fat in your head, filling your head with fat, and just losing intelligence because of it. Your brain cells are dying. Anyway, so Furwork Studios, as Pitt delicately reminded us, all in caps lock, that Furwork Studios is the fellow, the person, I should say, who came up with this topic. It's in the forums of Drunkduck, where we steal all our news QUACKCAST topics. Anyway, the Furwork Studios made a comment about how they're quite disappointed at the trend that they see of people being anti-escapist fiction and only supporting the idea that that stuff that is more realistic has any worth, and that only realistic stuff is intelligent and worth kind of looking at, and escapist stuff is not worth it. And Furwork Studios is against that idea and believes that escapist fiction actually is quite valid, and there is a good reason to enjoy it, and we shouldn't be critical of escapist fiction because it's a very valid art form. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true, that escapist fiction is just is killing you. It's taking away your maturity, and it's keeping you as a child. It's stopping you from growing.
Infantilization. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, your brain is just full of empty fat. Well, ironically, the brain is mostly fat. Did you know that? Well, the escapist fiction is making your brain more fat. So, and no, I'm being disingenuous here. I'm what should I say? I'm open.
Taking the
piss.
Taking the mick. I'm open. I'm open. It could be that escapist fiction is good for you, or it could be that it is bad for you. It could be either way. There is merit to both ideas, but I like the pose of taking extremist points of view, because this is 2020, and that's what we do in 2020. It's de rigueur. We have to, to do that, don't we? I mean, that's the thing. And if you don't agree with me, you're a cretin, and there's something wrong with you.
We will cancel you if you don't.
Yeah, you fascist, communist, leftist, rightist, you istists, bloody istists.
We'll find something of value to say eventually in this podcast. Eventually.
I will say that Oz was referencing this Simon Pegg interview where he was it's from a few years ago from what I can see, where Pegg was saying that this movies are too much about spectacle, and there's been a dumbing down of genre properties, which I think means sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, where, Simon Pegg obviously made his name and his career in that world, and then was saying there's too much of that stuff. It's too much spectacle. There's less substance in that kind of stuff. And when I first read the article, which I just read it on Patreon when we were recording, I said, okay, well, I mean, I could see where he's coming from there, but I have to admit, after a couple minutes of digesting it, I think there's a lot of a get off my lawn kind of mentality from Simon Pegg there. It's what's that?
No, sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I think that he's conflating two different points, because substance is something that, nobody has the monopoly on substance in terms of genre of art. You can find substance anywhere and everywhere. So, yes, he may have a point that there is a lot of stuff being produced that doesn't have as much substance as it could have, but that is not the problem of the category. It's the problem of the writers or the studios that order what they order. So,
right. So it's not about exactly the gritty, we already talked about a little on Patreon, the being gritty, being naturalistic or realistic, quote unquote, doesn't automatically mean substance.
Well,
not that Simon Pegg was necessarily saying that, but I think that he is. Sorry, I'll just finish up. He, there was mindless crap when he was a kid, loving the genre stuff he loved. When older people were saying like, "This is crap."
Exactly.
So this is not a new
Mr. Uber Star Wars fan.
No, and that's not to say either that there aren't still things of substance out there. I watched a movie last week. I think it came out last year, called Swallow, and I would say it had a great deal of substance. Not to say that, this one movie, but there's still things being made with substance out there. So I think that maybe his issue just is that the things that are going to get the money, I haven't read it all, so I can't put words in there. I haven't read any of it, honestly. We came up with it a while. But it sounds like what the problem with him might be is that forgetting the fucking terminology again. Things without substance get monetized and backed financially more easily, perhaps, than things that have more substance or become more popular. And that's just kind of always the way it's sort of been, but it's not necessarily like that across the board. So I'm not totally sure what he's mad at. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he pretty much says exactly what you just said. Yeah, like there is still good stuff, substantial stuff being made, but all this big spectacle stuff is like in the way, sucking up most of the money and like almost all the attention. I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying that's what I think he was saying. Yeah.
The big point of it is, I think that, and a lot of different Hollywood people agree with it, is the idea that big Marvel films, because Marvel made such a killing with their series. They were so successful with that Marvel shared universe thing. And you've got like Scorsese coming out against that, old school kind of traditionalist directors and things like that, being a bit disappointed that the Hollywood they started out with in the 1960s and the 70s has that kind of Hollywood doesn't exist anymore, and now it's about these massive Marvel and DC films, the comic book kind of stuff, and Star Wars. Those are the big films these days. So Simon Pegg isn't alone in that.
Yeah, but I do think that they have these, like we all do. I have the expression in Greek, I cannot translate it. It's like the rose-tinted glasses of the past, like nostalgia stuff, that you get to consider previous eras of Hollywood or, art production or whatever better because you remember the things that you liked a lot more than the things that you didn't like. And I would argue that take any decade, take even the decade of the golden cinema, like the 60s or the 70s or the 50s. I don't know if the 50s are considered the gold era, but anyway, silver, gold era of Hollywood. You would have, and you see all the, the mid-80s, you would see, if you see all the production and the title lists of each year, most of it would be mass-produced, not very much of substance stuff. You would have a lot of rom-coms, you would have a lot of very superficial paint by numbers stuff that was being produced, and you would have some gems that stand the test of time, and that happens still. It still happens.
So the remembrance is skewed and artificial. Well,
especially by what survives and is considered classic and stuff like that. Like we look back and think, oh, it must have all been like Not to Kill a Mockingbird and stuff like that, when that's not the case. That's just what has survived.
Godfather, yeah.
And ironically, you could say that some of the things that we celebrate today from those eras did not receive good critiques and did not receive the money, quote unquote, necessarily. I mean, they were not all My Fair Lady, and they were not all, I don't know, The Wizard of Oz or whatever. If you would consider The Wizard of Oz quality, I don't know. I like it.
Consider it to be more of an escapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A point I was going to make is that I would disagree with the idea that things are becoming more infantile and more escapist because, that's what sells, or it's somewhat inferior or whatever. I think the reason why stuff is like doing so well, this escapist stuff is doing so well, is because we can do it now a lot better than we could do it in the past. We didn't have the technology. Back in the past, it took so much work and so much skill and dedication to produce escapist stuff, fantasy stuff that was good, and a lot of suspension of disbelief and a lot of imagination in order to make that work. Like Wizard of Oz, for example, like this is all practical effects. This is like dwarves in makeup and costumes. This is all based on that stuff, and it was very, very hard work to produce that kind of stuff. Now with CGI animation being so good and the computing power, like massive like banks of servers and stuff, render farms they have to produce escapist stuff, we can do the stuff that we always wanted to do. So it's not that it's it's taking over because it's Dharma or whatever, or it's like it would have taken over in the past eras too if we could have done it as easily as we could have done it now. The only reason, this is my personal contention, that more realistic anti-escapist stuff was so popular in the old days is because it was like much easier to do that kind of stuff and cheaper to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's the point too. That this stuff now we do it now because you can. Go on, Thomas.
Yeah, but I'm not like someone that would. I don't want to play devil's advocate because I don't really think that previous eras had more quality than we do now. It's just that perhaps the problems in quality lie elsewhere now than they did back then. Exactly because we have differences in the means that we have available and what we can and cannot produce and put on the big screen and so on and so forth. However, I think that when you have fewer means, you might have a need to be a little bit more quote-unquote creative, in the sense that if the only thing that you have is a room that you can shoot, you have to find perhaps clever dialogue, because you cannot dress it up with anaz and glitter and distract people from.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Exactly.
I did not.
I did not. I did not do it. But yeah, because and then maybe you have to sort of be a little more unforgiving with the rougher stuff that will be in your work, because people might be able to discern it more easily. So you might have had not necessarily better dialogue, but more stylized dialogue that gives you the impression that you're watching something witty, whereas it may not actually be this good or this substantial. Again, all of this is subjective. So what I'm saying is that the shift in where the lack of quality lies might be going along with the technology and the experience and what people are looking for, and also how much they interact with the audience, because a lot of the stuff that we now get is a direct result of what people want and ask for very loudly on Twitter and stuff. So
not only on Twitter, but it's proven by what they pay for to see in the theaters too. That's kind of what the ultimate say is what pays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good point.
That said, I don't think that if you have a Russell Dazzle movie, it's not necessarily good quality. I have seen big blockbusters that are give you food for thought, and you think about them afterwards, and you think about the messaging and everything. And I have seen shoestring budget movies that are supposed to be very indie and edgy and thoughtful, and they are basically not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. The means don't make a good film. Well, like Scarface, the remake Scarface with what's his name, Al Pacino, back in the 80s, fantastic film. But you can make a Scarface an escapist version just as easily. I mean, if you had like that movie about space pirates or something like that, it'd still be just as good. It doesn't have to be like gritty Cuban refugees. It can be, you can set it anywhere, and it was still gonna be fantastic.
I'm not sure that it's not escapist. I don't know, and that might be a very radical thing to say, or the heretic opinion, but when you go to watch a mobster movie, what are you going there for? To escape from 9 to 5 routine, perhaps?
Oh yeah, literally it's escapism, but in the terms of what like Furwork Studios has sort of set out, it's more gritty and realistic than, say, Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? I mean, these are stories that actually happen.
Yeah, this is something like watching. What I always forget the character's name, Tony Montana, that's right. And kind of seeing his journey through the movie. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call that escapist. It's not easy to watch. It's not fun to watch a lot of the time, to see how things are kind of slipping away and getting worse and worse. I mean, it's thrilling. That part is fun, but like, I don't know, to kind of see the way like he and his wife drift apart and the drug problems and all that kind of stuff. Like that's gritty, real shit. Like I wouldn't say that that's escapist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's quite depressing in a lot of ways, but yeah. Anyway, you could set that in with an escapist setting, and it would still be just as effective and just as meaningful. I think part of that whole idea that these escapist things, the big budget stuff is bad, is the films that like the typical Marvel ones that aren't deep, that don't have any other meanings, that don't have real strong emotional kind of high notes and low notes. They tend to be like the idea of fast food for the brain kind of thing. And I I don't know if that's necessarily completely true. And I don't know if that's necessarily, even if they are like that, I don't know if that's necessarily really a bad thing, that they're a bit lighter fare. You know, like Ant-Man, for example, which is a fun film aimed at, you know, a very solid kind of family film. There's a really good argument for those kind of films. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Families enjoy them. Versus, I don't know, Captain America, that doesn't really hammer into anything very, you know, intellectual, or, you know, it's like set in the Second World War, and part of the ideas behind the original Captain America was like an anti-fascist character, specifically fighting the Nazis. Later on, it turned into like fighting Hydra instead of the Nazis, because, you know, the Second World War ended, and you still had to have the character continuing. But the film doesn't have him fighting the Nazis; it has him fighting only Hydra. So you get rid of all the, you know, the aspect of like Germans killing Jews and all that, and you have the more kind of sanitized version of that story, which is, you know, that does cut out a bit of the weight of the character Captain America.
Yeah, look at Wonder Woman, who did keep the whole thing in with the Nazis, and the whole backdrop with World War II. Was it World War?
They did World War One, I believe.
Oh, World War One. That's right. Yeah, I'm like, wait, were there Nazis?
I mean, there should be in Wonder Woman. they did it a different way.
But I mean, like they still kept that historical backdrop in there but it still, I think, remains more. I'm forgetting. I keep on wanting to say light entertainment. I guess I can still. I don't know why I keep on forgetting this phrase. I remember it when we don't talk about it, but anyway, I think it still can be considered that, because it's not something that they really dig into too much. It's almost just kind of more of a set piece, the whole World War I backdrop and stuff. And then, you know, you have Wonder Woman, you know, running through no man's land and being quite glorious as she does and not getting a scratch on her. But
and being super clean.
It's super clean. But yeah, I think even when films do manage to maintain, like, have that kind of realistic backdrop, they still can remain that kind of light entertainment sort of thing. It's when you have a film that looks more under the surface and like, oh, hey, yeah, people are being murdered over there. And this affects my character in some way, instead of just going like, oh, good and evil. But what about good and evil? You know, I guess in that respect, Wonder Woman, I mean, it does have a little bit of something more, but nothing that hasn't, that you don't typically see in superhero movies anyway. So, but I don't know. But that's not me saying that it's bad. I want to make that clear. I think it's a totally legitimate movie, but I guess when we come to classify, you know, what's something that is more gritty and realistic and stuff versus something that's more like a light fantasy, there isn't always a super dark line between the two. There's a lot of movies, and I'd say quite a lot of movies kind of stride the line in between, because if there's a movie that goes too far one way or the other, it either becomes pretentious or it's called stupid, and nobody wants that for their movies. So a lot of movies try to really stay in between the two.
Yeah.
Don't straddle the balance.
And the thing is, there are certain films that are extremely hard to watch. They are excellent movies. They give a lot of things to think about, and they stay with you pretty much forever. But you cannot watch them a second time, because it is an experience it gives you, it is art, of course, and everything, and it manages to give you an experience that you wouldn't otherwise have had, and it could even shape or stimulate you into getting into some other set of experiences that might have development of your character and your intellect and blah, blah, blah. But you cannot do that all the time. There is a limit to the mind where you cannot get too many traumatic things all at once, all the time, forever, because then you would just either get
desensitized
or very desensitized. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that you can get these experiences, not the experiences, but you can get the message without necessarily going through hell with the movie to get it. Especially when it comes to younger audiences or audiences that are already exposed to very dark and gritty things. Like, for example, I remember myself when I had a very hard case that I was working on with my mom about a kid that had been and that's a trigger warning, had been sexually molested. And we had to work with this child to get him to feel better about himself and be able to move on, get out of that hole and move on. So, yeah, after that, I didn't want to watch anything dark and gritty. I didn't want to watch anything that would make me feel like I was watching the dark underbelly of humanity, because I had just been there. I don't need to be there again. So yeah, an escapist film is going to help me sort of reset and get out of that headspace so that I can get back my energy and move on. So as we said in the beginning, as everyone has said, everything has its place and everything is necessary. It's the extreme. Like if you overconsume anything, that there may be some problem eventually. But
yeah. Well, what about, say, comics? So we can have lots of different styles of comics. A very popular style for comic is escapist fiction. But say you can have something like Moles, which is far more serious. It's still it's it's the one about the Nazi allegory. So the cats are the Nazis, the mice are the Jews, and blah blah blah. Very serious. But one of the problems with that is that is a serious comic. It tackles serious subject. One of the problems is people who want to talk up comics and defend them as a meaningful art form will immediately go, oh yeah, Miles, or Persepolis, or whatever that movie was, Persepolis, yeah, those kind of things, because they tackle serious subjects. So those must be the ways to defend comics. Those must be the ones you hold forth in order to say, comics can be a legitimate art form. Look at Miles, look at Persepolis, look at Where the Wind Blows. These kind of things. These are the worthy examples of comics. It's not all like trash, like all the stuff that you like. It's these good things. This is you read this.
So like elitism is what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's elitism, but I also think that that people have to realize the value in all the different kinds of comics. It's not just those that represent, what good comics should be. It's all of it has value, and by just holding up those as examples of, the art form, I think you really are limiting the experience of comics for people by only saying these things are worthwhile. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same with films. When you say only, you watch Come and See or Schindler's List or something like that, these are the only kinds of films that have worth, or these things are the only kinds of things that will educate you or enlighten you or whatever, then you're really limiting the art form, I think. And, well,
Yeah.
I mean, taking it back to comics, that is a huge thing, because comics, like, they take so many forms, and there's a lot of amazing beauty and art embodied in these things, and just to limit it to these more worthy kind of serious subjects is horrible. Like, do you guys remember as children when you're at school and you did your literature classes or whatever, and they would go, okay, so read Wuthering Heights or Jane Eyre or something like that. This fiction, this 19th century fiction, is the stuff that is worthy. Read Hamlet. Whatever. Read this. Read that. This is the kind of stuff that is worthy, and this is going to teach you about the English language and the art form. And you read it, and you're not old enough to be able to understand it properly. So you think it's crap, you don't understand it very well. And it's not enlightening and it's not interesting because you're not in a place where you can properly appreciate that, really. Jody Sanchez there, Pitt. But the thing is that doesn't enlighten you at that age because you're not in a position to properly understand or enjoy it. And it turns you off that kind of stuff. And it's I don't know. Pitt is spoiling my chain of thought with her hair mustache.
Sorry.
Forgot what I'm trying to say, but
very serious.
Very, very serious. Yes, you've got to take my serious point of view here. My serious idea. Yeah.
Well, books for children is a completely different can of worms, and books for young adults or young adolescents. And I'm not talking of the category YA, like young adult fiction, which is very modern. I'm talking the cohort of people being in high school or junior high school. If you give them books that are, the staples of international literature, and they're not ready for it, it might traumatize them, or it might completely turn them off or bore them, especially if it's about a lot of social issues given in a way that is meant to appeal to people that are actually interested about social issues for various reasons. And maybe when they grow up more and they have the experience of being outside of school, interacting with the world in a way that social issues become a reality for them a lot more, then they will also be interested in reading such book. That said, I do believe that kids do need to be exposed to this set of stimuli. And there are a lot of books that were meant to be read by children and adolescents. And the only thing is that what I have seen is that schools don't really pay attention to that at all. Like, they think that, especially in literature class, that kids are these mini adults that they are supposed to just read whatever the teacher likes and appreciate it and stuff. So what I'm saying is that, oh my God, I'm distracted as well. Anyway, what I'm saying is,
I didn't do anything this time, so it's not my fault.
It's Face's fault. What I'm saying is that if you have a general audiences sort of work, you're making me focus on you have general audiences sort of work that is able to be read and be appreciated by both younger people and older people, then that's the sweet spot, I think, for school material. Things that can be appreciated by all ages, and they tackle stuff that is very serious, but perhaps you can have different experiences with the book if you read it again and again as you grow up. And I'm thinking of a few titles. Unfortunately, they are all Greek, so I cannot really give the example and expect you to know it. So, yeah, so that's what I would. Oh, okay. One example would be Little Women, which is a book, or Little Men, which I find more interesting, by the way. But anyway, that is a book that can be read by all ages, and that would be art that you could tag escapist, because you escape into this sort of very embellished and idyllic looking family that has like everyone is very much loving each other, and they are all good, and they do good things, and they have good friends, and they go out and they are, you know, good with other people, and everything feels very sweet and la la la, happy go lucky, except when Beth dies. Everything else is happy go lucky. So, but if you read it again as an older person, or a person that is interested in that sort of thing, you see a whole range of different problems with society, that is as it is being described, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is that escapist versus substance versus who it is for versus audiences, like it is very blurry as a, like you cannot really talk in broad strokes about any of these things. That's the point. They're very wordily, I festooned into this. So,
You turned it into a TED Talk.
All right, so we're getting towards the end. Let's bring it back to more extremist points of view. Okay, I'll be the voice for the pro anti-escapism again, because I like taking
really
that
wants
pose.
to make this all about role playing.
I do. Well, I got the monocle on today, so I have to be pseudo-intellectual, very pseudo. So yeah, it's about how escapism is limiting to you. It's not letting you grow as a human being. Baines, for example, like last year, was it this year or last year? You fell back into your childhood. You purchased all these Muppet playsets and things like that, and you.
That's right.
Like, and as adults, we're buying these toys. Like I myself have a shelf full of Geegors and Toysies. I don't know whether it's all super blurry because I've got the blurry settings, so you can't see anything anyway. So that was pointless to show you. But
plus, this is an audio podcast.
Exactly. But yeah, so yes, as adults, we've reverted into this childhood state. We've infantilized ourselves, and we surround ourselves with toys and action figures. And that's also a much more accepted thing in popular culture now, that adults should be allowed to festoon their workplaces with figurines and things like that. We've got adults, dressing in costume and as superheroes. Who would ever do that? Like dressing themselves like as Napoleonic soldiers and stuff. I mean, for goodness sake. Like collecting, like swords and things. I mean, Jesus Christ. It's this is damaging to our society, don't you agree?
There's
I couldn't play along. I just wanted to listen to you go on. That's all. Don't ask for input.
Just rant. Just hold a pose and go for it.
Yeah. So does that mean that everyone has to redo that Moonlight because it's all depressing and sad?
Yeah, I agree. Without Moonlight is the Moors of Drunkduck. This is what we should hold up as our intellectual apex. What we can achieve.
That's how we're gonna get funding for this website that way.
Exactly.
Look, we're doing serious work here.
We'll get a grant. That's what we should do. That was my frickin' training back in the 90s. You know, doing my BA in art. They was basically training to go and make dissertations and go in front of grant applications people, whatever you call them, I don't know, and do your basically live off grants as an artist.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Give me $30,000 or $40,000 a year to be an artist in residence and create this thing that no one cares about and no one even wants to see, and that will be how I live, you know, and being self-indulgent and creating my own little thing.
Which isn't fun, is trying to get the grants for it and constantly asking for money.
Yeah.
Yeah, fight amongst yourselves with the other, like, 50,000 artists who are all after the same kind of limited pool of grants, and to fund your little personal point of view, and then you discover that most of the grant committees are stacked with friends of friends, and the real way to get grants is to have friends on the committees.
And then you have to come up with alibis, because obviously when you're not able to do that because you're not in any social circles, you have to kill people and hide the bodies and find alibis. And so you have to find credible alibis, and then you have to find good places to dispose of your competition. And that's what being an artist is all about, murder.
And if you had read non-escapist fiction that was more about the gritty reality, you'd know the best ways to do that, you know? Listen to the podcast about murders and things and psychopaths, and then you would know how to do it. You see? This is why escapist stuff is bad. You're avoiding the gritty reality that would teach you about life and give you valuable life lessons and techniques about how to deal with your fellow competitors for your life.
Unless you're reading fairy tales, because that's full of murder as well, and everyone's trying to kill everyone else and take the fucking throne.
Yeah.
So fairy tales aren't escapists then. They're the grittiest of true realities.
Exactly.
But they're walking around in fluffy pantaloons and things, and there's talking cats, so I'm sorry, but no. They have to be all drug addicted, like single mothers.
He says, "Is this monocle falls off his eye?"
They have to be drug addicted.
I wish it recorded.
Single
because
mothers.
in reality, you never have clans that say weird things that you would never be able to get away with writing dialogue for fiction. Like we never have that.
Never.
So...
Never. I'm bitterly against escapist stuff in all regards. It has ruined my life, and it has ruined the lives of everyone I know.
It killed your children and stole your girlfriend, and how much more can you run this into the ground?
Destroyed my dreams. It gave me visions of false fantasies that, you know, had spoiled me for life. And now that the scales have been removed from my eyes and I see the true reality as is, I need everyone else to see the true reality as well and not be
It was a plague
confused.
upon your crops. It sunk your Atlantis. It blew out the sun. It kicked God in the nuts. It called your cat bad names.
There's nothing worse than that.
Dulled your sword.
And turned your bed into a big black void that always gives you the impression of falling perpetually. So
Filled my mouth with the taste of ashes.
It's a good Megadeth song. Sweet taste of vindication, which turned to ashes in your mouth. Okay.
That is what reality has become to me, and that was what it should be with everyone else. A grey, dark, colourless void that is the true vision of reality. And
yeah,
I need
that's
everyone
where all
else to
the
see
internet
it.
stars are, guys. Like they are all in the grey void. Nobody's, doing anything colorful.
Colour is a lie. Colour is a trick of the brain. Really, it's the greyness is the true vision, and that's what you should.
We're gonna
be
come up with a better way to do this stuff, guys. Soon, I promise. We're gonna get better with this stuff again.
Not really, because we are very gritty and realistic, and
We are.
in real life, most panels have nothing to say and look at each other, and either, talk over each other or don't talk at all. So we are very realistic.
As we should be.
I still believe in magic.
Okay, we'll finish.
I got a twinkle in my eye.
We'll finish with a theme to Xanadu then. Xanadu, Xanadu, now we are here in Xanadu.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I like taste.
You are